Station. The End Zone. Mondays at 7 on Channel 4, the local station.
Jacksonville's signature natural resource, the St. Johns River. Hello, everybody. I'm Tom Wills. Jacksonville has another signature that many newcomers may not know about, a consolidated government, which right now is having its 40th birthday. In the mid-1960s, people here became fed up with corruption, waste, and duplication in the city and the county governments, and a crusade began to basically reinvent local government. Voters approved a revolutionary change, combining the city and the county under one government instead of two. In honor of the anniversary, we'd like you to see a 1965 Channel 4 documentary that helped convince people of the need for change. It's called Government by Gaslight.
Back in 1822, the brand new territorial government of Florida drew some lines on a map to mark off a number of counties so that government would be close to the people. They called this county in northeast Florida Duval. The idea was that a courthouse shouldn't be more than a day's ride on horseback from everybody. The courthouse in this county was at a little place called Cow Ford. Well, about 10 years later, in 1832, they changed the name of the town to Jacksonville. And about the time the Civil War started, the place had grown a little, and they decided to call it a city. They still were using river boats to move up and down the river. Things went along pretty well in Duval for a number of years, and eventually the people built a railroad and a pretty decent highway over to the beach. More and more houses went up over there, and a town called Pablo Beach was organized. The 20s was a prosperous time, and Pablo had a little boom, and they changed its name to Jacksonville Beach. A little way up the coast, the town of Atlantic Beach was born. And it wasn't long before Neptune Beach was incorporated. Back across the river, the folks out in the western edge of Duval County put together a little town of their own, and they called it Baldwin. And then a curious thing happened. People kept moving into the county and building houses, and raising families, and spilling all over the countryside. But the city limits of the main city stopped expanding. People kept pouring in by the tens of thousands, especially after World War II. And soon, there were a lot more people living outside the cities than inside. One day, a citizen stood up and said out loud, "Who speaks for Jacksonville?" And there was no answer, for no one seemed to know.
Hello. What a place, isn't it? I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm always amazed when I stand back and realize what a metropolis Duval County is. It's a long step in a short time, from Cow Ford with 100 souls to Duval with 500,000. Now, many of our people, as you've seen, live inside municipalities, the 5 cities and towns in the county. But most of the 500,000 people of Duval are pretty much in limbo and don't call any city home. Well, that much is easy to see. But no map can show the complicated maze of government with which these people have to get things done. Let's see if we can start a list. First of all, the city of Jacksonville has 2 major boards. One is a 9-man city council, a legislative body. The other is a 5-man city commission. an administrative body. But there are other important agencies in the city, like the Board of Library Trustees, which is responsible for libraries, and the City Recreation Board, which has its own set of powers. So much for Jacksonville. Now, out here in the western part of the county, the little town of Baldwin has a town council and a mayor. Over there on the ocean front, 3 municipalities are lined up shoulder to shoulder, but each has its own little bailiwick and its own little government. Jacksonville Beach has a city council. Neptune Beach, right next door, also has a city council. Atlantic Beach, another mile or so up the coast, has its own city hall, which is ruled by a city commission. Those are the municipalities. On a county-wide basis, there's a group of overseers called the Board of County Commissioners. The school system makes up a completely separate district, county-wide, and is run by a Board of Public Instruction. But there's also an elected superintendent of public instruction. And we can't omit the Board of School Trustees, who also have a voice in our schools. Another important board which has jurisdiction in many fields throughout the county is the Budget Commission. If this were all we had to deal with, it might be easy to keep them straight. But we've got a port development program, and that's under the Port Authority. We have a multi-million-dollar expressway program. That's under the Expressway Authority. We decided we wanted to expand the county hospital into a big complex, so we created a hospital authority. We found that we have a bad air pollution program, so we've launched an air pollution authority. At this rate, we may need an authority someday. Oh, one more. Over in eastern Duval County, there exists a little-known body called a mosquito control district. Now, trying to keep tabs on all of this and a lot more is an agency known as the Jacksonville Duval Area Planning Board. Now, 2 vitally important pieces of this mosaic are the delegation to the State House of Representatives and the delegation to the State Senate. This mass of local government units only scratches the surface. Every one of these boards and commissions and councils and others like them has power of some kind. Some of it is political power. Some of it's taxing power. Sometimes these officials are jealous of power. Sometimes they're afraid to use the power they've got. Sometimes these units all work well together. Sometimes they butt heads. Sometimes they get local problems solved. Sometimes they pass a problem around as if it were a hot coal, and the problem keeps getting worse. Sometimes this cumbersome apparatus works as a check and balance, and that's good. Much of the time it works to stifle progress, and that's not good. It might be well to ask, is all of this government necessary? Well, some of it is, and some of it isn't. For example, have you ever stopped to make a list of the agencies that we have 2 of? The City Police Department has 1 building. The County Sheriff's Department occupies space in another. When you have a complaint or a problem, you sometimes have to guess which one to call. Inside these 2 departments, the duplication really gets into high gear. The sheriff has a complete communication system with an expensive array of radios and electronic gear and radio operators. And the city has another one. Each department has to have special radio receivers just to listen to the broadcasts of the other one. The city police department operates its own jail, has to worry about meals and mattresses and guards and other things. The county has a separate jail with the same worries and the same kind of inmates. Certain kinds of prisoners are assigned to the county prison farm for some outdoor labor. The city has one just like it, where prisoners also get outside for labor, only it's called the city prison farm. Back at the courthouse, the sheriff has a full-scale investigative unit, but the detectives don't have files on every case that comes up. So they often have to check with the city's detectives. Sometimes it works the other way around. In government language, this is called liaison. In some cities, the jail and the radio system and the detectives are all in one police agency. And there's only one prison farm. And there's only one police number to call in an emergency. Let's try another tack. The city of Jacksonville has a civil service board that classifies jobs, administers tests, keeps records on seniority, and so on. The county has a civil service board, too. Job titles and policies are sometimes different, but the work is essentially the same. There are enough different pension funds, by the way, to keep a battery of bookkeepers happy. The city has 3, the county has 2. Over by the Gator Bowl, Jacksonville has a little headquarters building for the city recreation department, which supervises playgrounds and leisure time programs. The county has a headquarters just like it, only it's in the courthouse, and it's called the County Recreation Department. It does the same kind of things, and in reality, the city and county departments serve the same people. Whether the departments think alike on recreation needs or plan together is a chance you have to take. Perhaps you didn't know it, but traffic lights and other kinds of traffic control in the city are installed and maintained by what is called the Signal Bureau. The county has one too, does pretty much the same thing, although it's called the Signal Light Department. If the county needs a special piece of equipment now and then, it can't borrow the city's. It has to go buy one of its own. Duval County has a purchasing department, which handles bids and buying on hundreds of items, from typewriters to trucks to paper to light bulbs. The city also has a purchasing department, which also buys typewriters and trucks and paper and light bulbs. If, however, there were only one purchasing agent for the whole county, he just might be able to get better discounts on many things by buying in larger quantities. Take insurance, for example. The county contracts for many forms of coverage: fire, liability, automobile. The city needs insurance on the same hazards. If risks were spread over the entire county, it's just possible that the lower rates might be available. Automobile maintenance and repair is big business in the county, and everybody seems to have a piece of it. The county vehicles are serviced at one location. City passenger cars are taken care of at the city's main garage. But the city police department has its own garage for police cars. And the city recreation department does repair work and maintenance on its vehicles in its own garage. And this is not the complete list. Now, some of these things are trivial, you say? Well, let's look at some duplication that is pretty basic. One of the most vital agencies in the county is the tax assessor's office. It appraises property over the entire county, keeps records on every single piece of real estate. It places values on property so that local taxes can be levied to operate local government. But the city has an assessor too, and he places his own assessments on real estate within the city, even though the county assessor has already gone over the same property. Once in a while, the assessments differ, which must be frustrating to a property owner who finds that his property is worth one thing on one set of books and has a different value on another set of books. A number of counties in Florida get the assessing job done in both city and county with only one assessor. Zoning is an extremely important function, regulating the use of land for orderly growth and to protect property investments. Well, the county zoning board, which consists of the county commissioners, regulates zoning outside the cities. And the city zoning board, consisting of the city council, does the same job within the city. Zoning decisions, of course, ought to be based on the long-range economic and cultural needs of the entire urban area. But two different bodies are in charge of zoning here, and there's nothing that requires them to coordinate. Duplication of local government doesn't end there. Oh, no. The city and county each has an engineering department. and each has a department to repair and maintain roads. Each one has its own health department. The county has a tax collector, and the city has one too, city treasurer. The county has a battery of attorneys and auditors. The city has another battery of attorneys and auditors. There are 2 electric and plumbing codes and 2 different sets of examining boards to license plumbers and electricians. Duplication is virtually endless in these 2 agencies which dominate the metropolitan area. As often as not, it's expensive, confusing, and frustrating, and sometimes absurd. There's another interesting aspect to our local government. Much governmental activity is lopsided, and it's easy to find inconsistencies. Take fire protection, for example. The city has elaborate equipment, a network of fire alarm boxes, a high-pressure hydrant system throughout the city. The county is getting deeper and deeper into the firefighting business, but it just can't compare. And the result is that fire insurance in the county costs more. When the county rigs race off to a fire, they sometimes have to carry their water with them. In the city, streetlights and sidewalks are not universal, but they are abundant. This is one characteristic of a modern city. Look around the county area sometime and note the absence of streetlights, especially in residential areas, and the absence of sidewalks. There's nothing modern about this. The city of Jacksonville has a basic system for transmitting and treating sewage, inadequate as it may be, and a long-range development plan for expansion of the sewer system. In the county, there is neither. Sewage is handled by a flock of privately owned independent companies, or more commonly, by septic tanks. There is no rate regulation on private sewage systems, although they are monopolies. The city has a massive new central library and a network of branch libraries. The county has neither, and its people must travel into the city to have access to a library and its resources. Start construction on a building in the city and you have to abide by a strict building code which sets out certain quality standards. Start construction on a building in the county and the only standards you need worry about are those imposed by FHA or a similar agency. Otherwise, you can be as careless and as slipshod as you want. The city of Jacksonville has a weights and measures section which enforces accuracy requirements for all its merchants. Outside the city, there is no weights and measurements regulation, which leaves a housewife no choice but to trust the storekeeper's scales. Buy a pack of cigarettes in the city, and you pay 8 cents in state taxes. All of that tax money goes into the city budget, and it adds up to $2 million per year. Buy a pack of cigarettes in the county, and you pay the same state tax. But the county keeps none of it, turns it all over to the state to spend. It's inconsistent. The law says that the bus company and various taxi companies cannot operate within the city unless they first obtain a franchise. The same companies operate the same buses and taxis out in the county areas without a franchise. The law thus has 2 faces. There are some petty inconsistencies. Anywhere in the city, it's legal to stop on a red light and then turn right. Do the same thing in a county, and you get arrested for violating the law. There are important tax contradictions. If you live in the city, you are paying twice for many services. First, you pay county taxes for the sheriff, the assessor, the health department. But you also pay city taxes for city police, the city assessor, the city health department. Every one of these examples underlines the significance of this line here. In many respects, it's a great deal like a wall, separating the people who live inside from those who live outside. From the standpoint of services, the people inside this wall most often are the haves, and those out in the county are the have-nots. Or to put it another way, the county is trying to be like a city to its people, but it just can't do it. And yet, the entire metropolitan area is one big city. Except for these arbitrary boundaries, the people here live and work in one big melting pot, which we call Greater Jacksonville, where the fortunes of one affect the fortunes of another, where failures also interact, like a stack of falling dominoes. On the one hand, while it's true that this line is like a barrier, in many ways it's utterly meaningless. Many activities take place across this boundary as though it simply didn't exist.
Nothing is more central to this argument than the central city itself, which is economically and geographically a hub for the entire region. A massive river of commerce flows across the city limit line every hour of the day, as though there were no such things as city government and county government. Commuter traffic into and out of the central city has grown to a staggering volume, and most of the tens of thousands of automobiles that cross the city limit line every day are oblivious to its existence. It simply doesn't matter. The fact that we have a single expressway system serving the entire region is recognition that you can't go out and build a city expressway and a county expressway. The existence of a single port authority is recognition that port business and development can't be compartmentalized into a city port and a county port. The existence of a single county hospital, which serves city and county residents alike, is recognition that two hospitals would be wasteful duplication. There are some negative illustrations, too. The city pours millions of gallons of sewage into the St. Johns River every day, and it flows right across the city limit line, carrying its noxious cargo through areas the city has nothing to do with. Air pollution is a similar problem, which knows no geographic boundary. The new Air Pollution Authority recognizes it as an area problem. One of the really ironic twists is that a majority of the employees of the city of Jacksonville choose to live outside the municipality they work for. City government itself goes outside the city limits to operate the largest airport in the entire region, and a majority of the users of the airport do not live within the city's borders. The same description applies in spades to the city-owned electric power system, which supplies electricity for a broad area. Again, most of the customers do not live in the city. Sometimes the mechanism is reversed. The county brings its voting machines into Jacksonville for city elections and lets the city make use of the county's voter registration rolls.
The point? The point is that when it's convenient to ignore the city limit, like dumping sewage into the river, we go right ahead and ignore it. When it's necessary to ignore the city limit, as the expressway does, we take whatever legal steps are necessary to do so. The moral of the story, boundary lines are traditional, they're sometimes practical, but they are not sacred. Perhaps the most serious symptoms of our governmental disease are political symptoms. Take the matter of political responsibility. Within the complex layers of government in Duval County, buck passing has become a way of life. The voter who wants to fix blame is confronted by a bewildering array of officials, all pointing their fingers at each other. A citizen who needs a job done often has to be a detective to track down the proper man to do it. There's confusion between city and county on responsibility, and confusion within each one. Jacksonville, with its council and commission, has a two-headed government which no other city on earth has seen fit to copy. Take the matter of political authority. Who indeed speaks for Jacksonville? At the state level, for example, there are many Jacksonville voices, too many, and Jacksonville's influence is weaker than it might be. Within the county, there is no one policy on zoning or building codes or sanitation. There often are several. In little more than a decade, we will have twice as many people as today. But we're preparing, in many cases, for a population of 1 million with a piecemeal, unrelated planning. And Duval's scrambled government penalizes the individual, too. Much good political talent lives out in the suburbs. disfranchised, unable to take part in the governmental life of the central city. On the other hand, a multitude of people outside the city contribute heavily to various city budgets through electric revenues, airport concessions, Gator Bowl tickets. But an accident of geography denies these people any voice in deciding how these millions of dollars will be spent. This is taxation without representation, pure and simple. There's a serious political imbalance in lawmaking power. Within the city council can exact local laws, known as ordinances, whenever it wants. The county has no such power with which it can adjust to changing needs. To get local laws enacted or changed, the county must look to the legislature, which meets only once every 2 years. The legislative delegation itself sits at the top of the heap of local government, bearing a heavy hammer over city and county alike. But its immense powers can be invoked only when the legislature is in session. Now, tonight, in a somewhat fanciful but deadly serious mood, we've had a look at many overlapping, inconsistent, and frustrating aspects of Duval County government. It all reflects two things: growth, which has been dynamic; government, which has been static. We have simply outgrown our skeleton, a skeleton which was devised for a simpler, bygone day when Jacksonville was a small city. Every large community in America is confronted with the same problem, and many have taken major steps to try to solve it. Duval County is only now embarking on a road which ultimately will lead to a streamlining of its governmental structure. And a major committee, created by the legislature, will spend many months on the problem. It's too early to tell what the solution for Jacksonville should be, whether there should be one single unified governmental unit for the county or some different form. Tonight's program, a superficial look at the problem itself, is an argument for intense self-examination in the weeks and months to come. Jacksonville and Duval County have a greater destiny ahead, but government operated by Gaslight will not get us there.
Government by Gaslight, along with many other Channel 4 news stories and editorials, combined with the hard work of a group of local leaders, persuaded the public to vote for consolidation. It was approved by an almost 2-to-1 margin. That change, 40 years ago, enlarged Jacksonville to a city that covers 826 square miles, making our city in land area the biggest city in the world. I'm Tom Wills. Thank you for watching.
Mako